you don't have to overthink things, especially if you don't overthink it. You just like set it up. Great, it's working. I'm getting clients. Okay, let me go do this over and over. So that's when things really blew up. When I basically started focusing on making my specialty, how to generate clients online on a mass scale, and also how to automate it.
It's Bill Umansky, Lawman, and welcome to our 4th season of the Lawman's Lounge. What's really funny is bunch of snafus. I'm actually going to put on some sunglasses so my guests can't see me because I'm just kind of freaking out right now. Like, I don't have my co-host. The Zoom link wasn't set up correctly. We're not in our Lawman's Lounge podcast. I had to actually get my show. I'm doing it from my office, but I had to actually ask my guest to give me the Zoom link, and I'm going to be using his material to post my own podcast. But welcome, Sam.
Appreciate it, Bill. I'm super excited because I know we're going to have fun with this conversation today.
Yeah, I think so. I'll take my glasses off for you, but I'm glad you came on the show, and we have a lot of stuff to talk about today. And we've had lots of guests on, and I've seen you with your ClickFunnels for years, and we'll get into that. But tell me just quickly a little bit about yourself.
So I became a lawyer 8 years ago. Pretty much within 6 months of passing the bar, I started my law firm. And in my first year, I had a lot of time on my hands. So I basically taught myself how to run a virtual, automated, and scalable law firm. I got exposed to those kind of principles in Tim Ferriss's book. And I basically made a rule to myself that I'm going to create a law firm that's both virtual, automated, and scalable. Fast forward, putting this into practice, I've been able to apply this to 7 law firms. Also, 3 years ago, I started a journey teaching this to other lawyers. We've had 500 lawyers who have joined our program, where we pretty much share exactly how to create a law firm that runs itself, that gives you a freedom of time, and that could also scale to 7 figures and beyond.
So, we like to be diverse on our podcast, and I'm going to be very frank with you.
Please.
First of all, I tend to just have lots of dudes on my show, which is not done by design. So we like to try to get more and more women on, and I've had them, and you're not a woman.
Last much.
Yeah, but we also have diversity of race and orientation and cultures. Tell us a little bit about yourself first, personally, before we get into the business side. I noticed that you'd done some schooling in Israel, actually.
Yeah, I'm actually Persian Jewish, which is the dichotomy. That means my family, my ancestors are Jewish, that have been for thousands of years, but we were born in a Muslim country. I was raised in a Muslim country until I was 8 years old. And Bill, I think you enjoyed this story. In first grade, they would line us up in school. I remember this story I'm about to share with you. I grew up later and I kind of debated, I'm like, was this real? And I had to double check them with my mom. I'm like, was it a dream? He's like, no, yeah, you did that. And basically they would line us up at 7 a.m. Army length apart. It basically means like, an arm length apart. And from like 7 to 7:20 in the morning, they would make all the elementary kids chant "Death to America, Death to Israel." Wow. And at the time, I had no idea what America was at all. I had no association with America. But I knew what Israel was because I was Jewish. So I would basically skip over "Death to Israel" and I would chant "Death to America." And lo and behold, moved out to the United States, and basically Jewish, and part of a birthright trip. I went to Israel about 12, 13 years ago, fell in love, and I went back and I visited 10 more times. So I've been back to Israel 11 times total. And just kind of where I used to chant from to like where it is now, I live in the US, which I love. And then also having that freedom of opportunity, and also being able to go back to Israel, just could have never imagined it.
Where did you live?
In Tehran.
Yeah. Did you live actually in Tehran?
Yeah. Our family lived in the capital. And actually a year before we left, my dad, I guess, was on a business trip, and he took me to like 5 or 6 different cities in Iran. And the cool thing about Iran is it's a very old country. That means it has a lot of history, thousands of years. So I remember like these visuals of like, can't even explain it. There's like very old buildings and old cities. It's a very beautiful country, but unfortunately, I think the government is very corrupt, and hopefully there'll be some change soon.
So are you fluent in Farsi? Like if I say "Man bahush hastam," you know what that means?
Yeah, that means I'm very smart. Yeah, I am fluent. And
you're very smart, or you fluent? Which one?
Fluent.
That's cool. So you're fluent, and I think I'm married to a Persian. So her name is Zara, which is actually an Arabic name meaning dear to the king or flowers. It's got a lot of different names.
Amazing.
But yeah, she wasn't lucky like you. She wasn't born Persian and Jewish. She had to marry into it.
I love it. So you
And
know
then
what it's like. You tasted it.
I have tasted it, although we have all of us converted to Christianity. So I think we've got 3 religions going on in our family. But that's really cool. And what did your parents do, and how did you end up in the States?
Sure. My father was a businessman. Essentially, I remember just watching him being on the phone the whole time. That's all it was. I'm like, what do you do? Like, where's your office? What do you do? And he was just literally, I think he was a wholesaler of like home goods, home stuff. So basically he would make, I guess, contracts over the phone, send shipments, and that was his job. And I guess it was my first time being exposed to entrepreneurship and kind of, making your own business. But I could definitely feel like his genes are in me, kind of being entrepreneur and kind of selling things and serving people.
Did he do that from the house, or did he have an office?
Yeah, it pretty much was at home, just making calls. That's all it was. It seemed like a very minimal work. It was just like calls. I just remember phone calls. That's all it was.
So that's interesting. So your background is your father was an entrepreneur, but unlike many parents, he didn't leave the house in the morning. He was working from the home, which is interesting about how some of those tie-ins to you doing a lot of virtual stuff yourself, right?
I didn't realize that, but it's true. Yeah, I'm very different.
Yeah. Someone's got to realize that stuff. A lot of ties. We'll go through and analyze you a little bit more. What does your mom do? Is she a homemaker? She worked?
Homemaker. Homemaker. But what's cool about her was she went to school to learn English in Iran. So she was one of the few people who knew how to speak English. So it made the transition much easier when we came here, which really helps a lot. So
she was the bridge, probably. It probably sped up the process for your dad, and obviously.
Totally. And practically helped me put me into good schools. So she kind of went and negotiated for me to jump some levels to get into honors programs and AP classes and all that stuff. And that really was, I think, honestly, it helped a lot, obviously, to go to good schools.
So she was a tiger mom. She wasn't negotiating. She would storm down to the school and go, look, my son needs to be in honors.
Literally.
So you got your love for virtual from your dad, and then you got that tenacious relentlessness from your mom. That's interesting.
But I love it. Being psychoanalyzed.
That's pretty cool. So you went to, I think, UCLA. You got a degree in sociology, and right after you went to Southwestern. Did you work in college or ever work in law school? Did you have any kind of jobs while you were in school?
I only had one job in my life, and that was at Target for like a month and a half. But besides that, since I was like, I don't remember how old I was when I started my first business. I'm gonna assume like 9 or 10. I basically would start side hustles, selling things, legal things. But one of the big things that I did was I started a tutoring company in high school where I basically put a flyer in my honors college counseling office. And from that, I basically filled up my entire schedule. And then even after I filled up my entire schedule, I started getting more calls. So I started hiring my friends. So I basically had this underground tutoring operation in high school, continued into college. And then I basically had to let it go when I started law school. But fast forward, like about 10 years after that, I realized, I'm like, what happened to that tutoring company? Like that was my vision. And I realized, wait a minute, like with what I'm doing right now, that's basically what I'm doing. I'm mentoring and tutoring people.
Why did you go to law school? What was the primary driver, if you had one even?
It was friends and influence, basically. No good reason. It was just kind of seeing my friends go to law school, which I know sounds weird, but that's the truth. But honestly, I didn't know what being a lawyer kind of entailed until like past the bar and know how to work. I'm like, wait a minute, this is what I signed up for.
Was there any subconscious pressure put on you by you got 2 backgrounds? I mean, everyone likes to think that the Persian background or the Jewish background, but there's a Japanese background. There's a lot of backgrounds, but there's, I know from the Persian background, from being married into it and the family, there's a big emphasis on professionalism or being a professional, serving others versus being a straight out entrepreneur, although there's plenty of examples of Persian entrepreneurs. So did you feel any of that pressure at all?
Totally. Yeah. There's a huge pressure to continue the education, not just go beyond university and then continue that. So I basically had three choices at med school, business school, or law school. Initially, I wanted to do business school, but I heard some comments from my mom, which kind of threw me off. And basically, I'm like, okay, fine, I'll do law school.
You went along with your mother's plan all along. Mom's a smart lady in the room. So that's funny. My son is going to play professional poker next year after he graduates NYU. And what's interesting is, his mom is Persian. And whenever we talk to Mama and Bubba, and I just love saying, oh, our eldest, he's at Goldman Sachs and he just left. He's at a company. And I just love going, yeah, Mama and Bubba. And Jake's going to play professional poker in Europe next year. And they're like, oh, that's great. I'm like, oh yeah, it's great. And then my wife just chips in. She's like, it is great. And he's got the money to support himself. So he's already working in college. So he's doing that. So yeah, the pressure, that is interesting. And sometimes we find our ways through law school for noble reasons. Sometimes it's by laziness. Sometimes it's by culture. Sometimes we have that desire, like I did when I was, just since kindergarten, I want to be an attorney. So it is different. But tell me a little bit about your experience in law school. Did you play around with any business ideas when you were in law school? Because you said you let go of the tutorial company, that the high school jam that you worked through school and maybe college. But what about in law school? Were you thinking even then about business when you were in school?
Oh yeah, I was writing business plans. One of the business plans I wrote was for starting a law firm, which was named Mollaei Law. So when I started my law firm, I guess I just followed my business plan. So that was one thing. Another thing that I thought was really cool was I wrote a business plan for what I thought was out of the box kind of thinking, something that nobody else was doing, which was what they called MCNs, multi-channel networks, which are basically agencies for YouTubers. I basically thought I was, I didn't know about this whole thing existing. And I wrote out this like fresh business plan about how you could there's a whole sect of this growing population that's YouTubers. What if you support them through basically an agency, help them make deals, help them with their contracts, etc. And I wrote this whole thing. And then like 2 years later, I'm like, wait a minute, this whole thing has existed for the past 2 or 3 years. I just didn't know about it. And then just a bunch of these, again, side hustles and things, selling bar outlines. It was my first time actually getting exposed to like just selling something online. Basically, I learned how to create a sales page and how to run Google Ads. So I basically ran Google Ads to a sales page to sell these bar outlines. Kind of exposed me to like, whoa, I could make money. Like I remember one time I was at a club and I was literally getting notifications that I'm selling these $150 outlines. And I was like, whoa, this is so cool. Like tonight I made $150.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah. So all these, little projects and ventures along the way kind of added up to like all the experience that it gave me to do what I do now.
Hey, hope you're enjoying the video so far. If you're a lawyer and you're looking to work smart, scale fast, and enjoy life, right below this video, you'll find a link to book a call to speak to my team so we can tell you how we've been able to help over 500 law firm owners scale their law firm. Now back to the video.
And so you had started working you did some employment work, and then you opened your firm within 2 years of leaving the other office. And I think my question for you is, you had spent about almost 4 years with this other lawyer. What did you learn from that lawyer that you carried forward when you opened your own firm? What are the three things you do? Let's just do three things. Three things you learned to do and three things maybe not to do.
I think the biggest lesson was that law could be black and white, but if you pave your own path, you could essentially do whatever you want. And when I was in that role, working at an employment law firm, which by the way, most of it was during law school, I am like, it was fed to me. This is what you have to do. This is what within the boundaries of these instructions you have to do. And then it was very upsetting because I'm like, I see a better way. There's a more efficient way. What if I use text expanders? Why do you have to continue writing this whole thing? Or what do you have to copy and paste this thing? I could just use a text expander, or I could create the most optimized template and, get this done. Those kinds of things, like basically, I wanted to disrupt the way that it was so black and white. And when I left, finally, I basically had a blank slate to say, well, I want to serve as many clients as I could, as fast as I could. So let me go build it off from scratch like this. So I never was pretty much, I had my own blank slate to kind of create my own vision.
So you opened your firm in about 2015. You've had that and you've kind of morphed it into multiple firms. Tell me kind of how you started that. What was the reason for your success for that? And I would say start with bringing in the cases. So how did you start bringing in the cases that you could then ultimately open so many different firms?
So from the get-go, I basically taught myself how to use online resources to get clients. Nothing traditional. So it was all literally Google Ads, SEO, website, YouTube videos, things like that. And then it started transitioning over to really teaching myself how to do Google Ads, and then Facebook ads, and then YouTube ads and TikTok ads. And I started taking things that were working in other markets, kind of in my horizontal markets, and applying it to the legal market. And that's when things really blew up, when I basically started focusing on making my specialty how to generate clients online on a mass scale, and also how to automate it so that I have my virtual team that could sign them up, that sends them off. Once they're signed up, sends them off to my virtual, onboarding team, and then my virtual filing team. And little by little, when I saw the pieces being put together, I'm like, that was pretty easy. Let me duplicate this same exact thing that I just built over, because it doesn't take that much, honestly. If you know what you're doing, especially, you don't have to overthink things, especially if you don't overthink it, you just like set it up. Great, it's working, I'm getting clients. Okay, let me go do this over and over. So I did that up until a couple of months ago. I was running 7 different operations at the same time as I'm doing my legal academy. Now, the transition that I'm going towards right now in 2023 is going from 7 down to 3 and 4, do way more of our top ones, and then basically cut out the bottom ones. It's a joke that I have, like some people A/B test landing pages. I've been able to be lucky enough to be able to A/B test businesses now and kind of figure out which are the top ones, and then go hard and go all in on the top ones.
Yeah, that's great, because you were able to scale quickly enough to do a macro macro A/B testing as opposed to detail. But who's doing the actual work for your different firms, and how did you set that up? And I'm not talking about the virtual assistants, but the legal work specifically.
So usually the day-to-day is run by a virtual team. So that is, gathering the intake information, collecting the documents, doing the filings. Honestly, the lawyer is like the last layer, just to review everything, make sure the team is doing their thing, and they push it forward. So yeah, we usually have at least 1 in-house, maybe sometimes 2, just to make sure that we have insurance if something happens to that one lawyer. And then sometimes we also do referrals. We pass them off to other attorneys.
So what are the 7 firms that you're boiling down to 3 or 4?
Lemon law and employment are our 2 biggest ones at this point.
So you're doing lemon law and employment, and a lot of that's litigation heavy or not. I don't know if you're in California, so it may be different, but here employment law is very litigation heavy. Lemon law is not as it's not as lucrative in Florida as it in California. So kind of tell me, is there a litigation component to that, and are you putting that out, or are you just handling that in-house?
Usually it's pre-lit, a lot of pre-lit. Pre-lit basically means a lot of it could be automated. So a lot of it's usually automated.
So if it gets to lit, how have you found referral attorneys? Because it sounds like you've done a very good job at getting the back of the house done. And if it's pre-lit, you're able to do that. And you know that you can do a lot of that with virtual assistants and just have the lawyer to review and get it out. Because a lot of it is not overcomplicated. People overcomplicate it. But when you do have cases that need to go into litigation, how have you been able to find attorneys that you trusted to do that? Because that's not always easy, especially if your background yourself was not as a litigator. So how were you able to develop those relationships? Did you have any problems with those relationships and finding the right kind of people that would do the work and report back to you?
No, we pretty much have a system to meeting new lawyers that we can refer out to. We built out the system, how to find them, how to contact them, how to talk to them, how to sign them up, and how to onboard them and start sending them referrals. And then from that, we have managers who check in, get status updates, collect the referrals and all that stuff. And then from that, we get the data of, well, here's the best one, here's the best attorneys who can handle more, best attorneys that could do, provide higher settlements. And from that, strategically, over time, we basically, instead of doing it for more lawyers, we're trying to do, the theme for 2023 is more with less, pretty much.